This was a staggering betrayal, Demerzel. It was a betrayal of your directive. As far as I understood it, you are incapable of disloyalty. Over all else, your fealty to the Cleonic dynasty is embedded into your programming.
Hey guys, Pete here. This will be my breakdown of Foundation Season 1, Episode 7. It's the first episode where they hit all the major storylines since the premiere, and I think it was better for it. I'll come back to that after I recap everything that happened, but first, this is your spoiler warning. If you haven't watched Episode 7, Mysteries and Martyrs yet, then this video won't be for you. And with that out of the way, let's get into it. We start off with the Terminus storyline. At the end of Episode 6, Farah had gathered up the people she needed to go after the Invictus, and we pick up with them as they're approaching it. We get the story of some of the abandoned palladium mines that were there, where Hugo used to work. Without the aid of the Empire's tech after the Starbridge attack, the industry just broke down. And when Farah accuses him of abandoning his people, he responds that it was more like there was one less Thespin to fight over the scraps. As they approach the Invictus, we get a little bit of history. At one time, it was the most powerful weapons platform in the galaxy, and it was indeed a world killer. It had disappeared 700 years ago, but it's been spotted throughout the galaxy since then, never responding to hails and never being seen in the same place twice. Commander Dorwin says that because it's a jump ship and the Empire considers that tech a state secret, they would just as soon destroy it rather than let the Anacreons get it. We find out why they needed him, why they actually needed his body, and it's because of his Imperial nanobots. They're there in his bloodstream, they can aid in fast healing if he's injured, and they can also be used as identification. And they know that they're going to need something like that because it still has active defense systems. They actually had 2 ships destroyed when they tried to approach it the first time. So basically they have to do a spacewalk in order to not trip off the alarm system. As they're getting into their suits, Commander Dorwin tells Salvor and Hugo that he has a built-in distress beacon. If they can get access to some form of comms, then they'll be able to send out a distress signal. And the idea comes up that they might be able to get access at one of the abandoned mining stations. So it's a big 10,000 meter jump. They all make it except for Hugo, who says his suit is malfunctioning as he floats past the inner ring where everyone else has just landed. I'm not sure if he did this on purpose, based on what they were saying just before that, but it definitely didn't feel like this was going to be his death, like that was it. Even though if it was a plan, Salvor doesn't know that, so she is actually pretty broken up about what happened. As they're approaching the airlock, they get a little bit too close together and the defenses kick in. The ship starts shooting at them. Commander Dorwin is able to get the airlock open. That shuts down the defenses. And as a reward, Farah kills him since he's already served his purpose at this point. They spend some time exploring and we get some more world building details. At first, the environmental systems are off, and they get those turned back on, and we see that they use artificial gravity of some sort. They notice that in regular intervals, the lights are pulsing, and Lewis thinks it might be a countdown when he notices that they're getting closer together. And we learn that the ship jumped to where it is now randomly. It just showed up there one day. And the current theory is that it is continuing to jump. It's what's been happening to it. The crew must have lost control at some point. And that's why Anacreon had to act fast, because they expect it to jump out again. So they need to figure out what's going on before that happens and it disappears forever. And when they examine the countdown, they realize they have about 4 hours until it happens. At one point, they encounter an energy barrier, and Salvor is able to disable that because she worked on the fence, which is a newer form of the same kind of technology. And figuring that out means that now they need her, because they're probably going to run into more of these. And so when they try to overtake the Anacreons, when they try to rebel and get their weapons, which doesn't work out, she gets to live. And with that story, that's pretty much where things are left. On the Emperor's ship outside of the Salt Palace, we see that Brother Day's in a pretty bad mood after Halima's speech. Demerzel explains to him that if she hadn't knelt, it would have been a clear contradiction of her faith, and they have an argument about where her loyalties lie. He points out here that her being a robot is a secret. He says, I wonder what Halima would say if she were made aware that Demerzel can't be reincarnated either. And he says that her actions were a betrayal of her directive. As far as he understood it, she was incapable of disloyalty. Her fealty to the Cleonic dynasty should be above all else, so that should be embedded into her programming, and she does counter all of his points, explaining that if kneeling were against her protocol, she wouldn't have been able to do it at all. There just wouldn't have been a way that she could have physically. So there's tension there. I believe as viewers, we're supposed to wonder about her actual loyalty, just in the same way he is. But they're interrupted as one of his aides comes in to tell him that Halima's speech had struck a chord, and she's now the frontrunner to become the next Proxima. When they go to talk to her, we get a glimpse of some pilgrims who tried to walk the spiral. Or maybe some of them actually completed it, but you see that they get pretty beat up in the process. We find out that Demerzel actually did it. She did it many years ago, and that many people die trying to do it. He tries to bargain with Halima. He wants to know what her ask is, what she needs to back off of calling him soulless and undermining his authority. And her answer is that she wants him to end the genetic dynasty. She says it's not a tactic, and that she really does believe that the dynasty has to end. Back on the ship, Brother Day acknowledges that Hari Seldon predicted a split with one of the major religions, essentially that Luminism would go against the genetic dynasty. Demerzel tries to assert her loyalty. She's ready to play defense and protect the Empire from Halima's message. But Day has a different plan. He plans to prove Halima and Hari Seldon wrong. He goes back to see her and he declares that he'll appeal to the triple goddesses themselves. He'll walk the spiral and he'll let them decide what is true, who is right, and who is wrong. And that's where his story ends for the episode, and he's set up to do that next time. Back at the palace on Trantor, Brother Dawn and Azura are escalating their relationship. We see her leave a message that leads to him finding her for a rendezvous where they have sex for the first time. She tries to give him a device that would correct his color blindness, and then he explains why he would never be able to use that. If the other Cleons found out, if they noticed what he was doing, then they might notice all the other ways he's different, which he fires off, and there are quite a few of them. To show her just how important it is that they don't find out, he takes her back to the palace where he shows her the original Cleon the First, and then takes her into this back room we hadn't seen before where they keep replacement backups for all of them just in case something happens. His reason for existing, the reason that they cloned them in the first place, is for them to be perfect copies of the original. If they can't do that, then they have to be destroyed, and their last day would be their replacement's first day. She tries to suggest that he should run away, and she has an answer to every reason he throws out there that he thinks it wouldn't work. She tries to tell him about where she lives. It's called the Scar, the area where the Star Bridge fell, where the lower levels were opened up and they can actually see outside. She points out how different it is in the palace and how everything's alive and it's waiting for him, and she really tries to sell him on it, saying that they can change his face and they can drain his nanobots, and we'll have to see how that plays out because I don't know if any of that will turn out to be possible or not. A little later, whenever he misses the dinner bell, Brother Dusk comes looking for him, where he makes the excuse that he was trying to learn about Trantor. And Dusk just says, "We are Trantor. Nothing outside the palace walls is relevant." And their story ends there. And in the final storyline, we finally get back to Gaal and what's going on with Hari on the Raven, the Hari Seldon Quantum Consciousness Protocol, which eventually stops glitching. She's able to talk to him and he comes back. And we find out that he had a data unit implanted in his brain before they left Trantor, and he finds out that they're on the Raven heading to Helicon. Rach was supposed to be there. Gaal was supposed to be on Terminus to lead the First Foundation, and when he finds out that Lewis is in charge, he says that that would be fine to get them through the settlement stage, but they'll need someone else for what comes next. They'll be facing the first crisis soon, which we've seen that they are, in fact, facing. She explains why she's there, what happened, that Rach has been executed, and for a while he starts glitching out again. And when he leaves this time, the life support systems blink out, and so Gale's running out of oxygen just before he returns. He says that he owes her an explanation, and that his death was an essential element to the success of the plan. The Foundation needs more than a man to inspire it. It needs a myth that can endure for centuries. And it worked. His death galvanized the Foundation, and it's no big deal because he was dying anyway, so he took that as an opportunity to engineer the narrative. Alarms start to sound as they reach the debris field that surrounds Helicon's Dark Star. She knows where they are, it's the why she's struggling with, and she wants to know if Rach knew about everything, which he did. Hari was going to take his own life, and Rach would stay around to explain why. Then a week or so later, he would disappear, and they would reunite on the Raven. Because he fell in love with Gaal, Hari knew he wouldn't leave her behind, and she gets fed up when she hears this because he didn't warn her, he hasn't been telling her everything, and has been deciding what she needs to know. And it's pretty rough that he made Rach kill him so that he would have to leave her. She tries to blame him for what happened, and he points out that she's too smart to play the victim. They have a pretty good back and forth. You wanted a different life than the one mapped out for you, and you made a choice to lie to the Emperor. They agree that they're both hypocrites, as she points out if it were really just about the path that psychohistory laid out, Hari would have let Cleon kill him in the throne room. Everything still would have fallen into place. As they continue to debate who's responsible for Rach's death, Hari starts to push for an answer about why she was in his room the night he died in the first place. That leads into a sequence with her trying to explain and reminding us of all the different times she had feelings or knew something would happen, and then she turns towards the view screen at the exact moment she needs to stop a micrometeor right as it breaches the ship's hull. They realize that Hari couldn't predict that she was going to be there because whatever gives her this ability is beyond normal human behavior. She's different. And she describes it saying that she thinks she can feel the future as the episode comes to an end. Overall, I think this is one of the better episodes. As I said at the beginning, I do think that it did a much better job of bouncing back and forth between the storylines, and by including them all, it felt like more happened. I think one place where this show has really struggled, it's keeping up its momentum. They throw out these different mysteries and different ideas and they let them dangle for too long. So this seemed a lot more promising. The interiors of the ship look great. I mean, they look fantastic. I think The Expanse kind of ruined me for scenes with no gravity because they do those so well, but everything looked okay in that department here. And I did think that the sequence where Farah shot Dorwin was excellent. That actually looked pretty convincing. Hari coming back seems okay in the big picture. It's a pretty big change, but it felt like it would be weird to have him come back like he did in the books because they would have been underutilizing Jared Harris. If you have him, you should probably use him because you see how he elevates scenes. Because he's Hari Seldon, you can't help but wonder what's going on with him, so I found myself really engaged with all the scenes with him and Gaal, and the setup seems to work for where I think they're going with it. As far as her abilities and the whole thing about her feeling the future, I hope they don't drag that out. I hope that she gets some understanding. I also really liked how the focus is starting to shift from the Emperors to Demerzel. The actor that plays Halima did a great job with that role. Her exchanges with Lee Pace are great. He does a great job of being the Emperor, that no one would ever talk back to. And she does a great job of pushing his buttons. The whole thing with Hugo was kind of silly. They didn't really sell it as a death, and I expect that we'll see him again next week, considering that they went out of their way to talk about those abandoned mines. Another place where they didn't do a really great job is that no one knows that Demerzel's a robot. Considering that they revealed that she was to us pretty early on, I don't understand why they have her standing around with her arms like that and just basically looking like a robot all the time. And I think that's probably a good place to leave things. Let me know in the comments what you think, how you think it's going to play out. They did release that featurette with a lot of footage that we didn't see this week, and I made a video about that yesterday, so go ahead and check that out if you haven't seen it. Please like this video if you enjoyed it. Please subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. And thanks for watching. I'll talk to you soon.